All right. The end of another year. So obviously 2020 has been a year that has been very different to all other years in a lot of ways. And I guess in a lot of other ways, very similar, right? Um, it's definitely been a year to test us, I guess, in terms of how confident we are in who we are and how confident we are in what we're pursuing, whether that be a career front or a personal front. And it's been very confronting in a lot of different ways as well. And we'll kind of touch on that in our end of year wrap, which anyone who reads the newsletter should get the pun there. But also knowing that this is going to go up on the YouTube, and knowing that most people only watch the YouTubes for an average of 4 minutes, I think I want to start with the most important part. And the most important part for us from this year is to say a very big thank you to our community, and not just our clients, but to our greater community as well. Everyone that follows our pages, that likes our posts, that reads our content, that shares our content, that forwards newsletters to people that they think that might benefit from them, or that even sends us, feedback on what they enjoyed, what we could do better, or things that we've said or posts that resonates with them. Like, you guys are the reason that we go through the effort to put these pieces together. You're the reason that we put all the content together. And our goal really as a business is to try to be a source of reliable and helpful information, and a source of support for the community. So to be able to still see our community grow, it's because of those members within the community that allow us the platforms to be able to do that. And we enjoy it as well. So thank you for being part of it, and for letting us continue to do what we do love so much. But if that's all you hear from this podcast today, this episode, then perfect. So thank you. Keep doing what you're doing. 2020, Mag Dog. Crazy year, like I said, in a lot of ways, and very confronting. And obviously very different too, given where we are in Melbourne, and where you are in Vancouver at the moment, in BC. And I think, ironically, there's almost a feeling with the calendar year for what's going on here in Melbourne that it is all coming to a close, not just 2020, but a lot of the issues that we've been dealing with, which might not necessarily be the case, which is super daunting as well. But it's definitely been, even pre-COVID, this year sort of has been very interesting. I mean, we started off here in Jan with some pretty intense bushfires, some pretty scary scenes in kind of country Victoria, and ironically, it feels like the year started on fire and then has just continued to just burn the last 12 months. So yeah, regional Victoria, in terms of community issues, kind of got double hit, because they got burnt out, and then there was a really big push to try to encourage more tourism to go into rural Victoria, and kind of help rebuild. And then come March, everything started locking down. And then by June, it was, you couldn't leave 5Ks of your house. So there's been quite a few issues on that front here more locally. And obviously, my big thing, with COVID, I'm going to try not to jump ahead too much, but for me, it hasn't been necessarily that COVID's caused a lot of issues. It's just really exacerbated a lot of existing issues already, and kind of made us more acutely aware of a lot of the challenges that do predominantly exist within the community. And we wrote and do a bleachers report every month, like a bit of a personal blog, and things that pardon me, things that I'm thinking about. And this month, the focus really was, all of a sudden, a pandemic kind of being brought right to our face, and it's hard to ignore. But given the industry we're in, I feel like we've been kind of swimming our way through a pandemic in terms of some of the health issues that we're facing physically and mentally within the community every day, and I think when you kind of are forced to be at home and kind of confront a lot of those issues that we so vigorously sweep under the rug a lot of the time and don't deal with, and kind of sidetrack ourselves by being busy or being productive or sticking our heads in the sand or whatever it is, all of a sudden, when it's all taken away and you're forced to confront a lot of those things, and a lot of those decisions that you've made over a long period of time, that is quite confronting, right? But at the same time, we look at our community, and we're CrossFitters, or we're weightlifters, or we're obstacle course runners. We're predominantly built by a community of people who take pride in training regularly and training for life. And it's kind of like this year's been exactly what we've been training for, you know, and we've been preparing and preparing and preparing. And it's for when times like this occur, that unexpected element that I feel pretty confident in the majority of our community to be able to roll with the punches, see out a 10-round workout, like whatever it is, kind of just like keep on keeping on. And it's been very encouraging to see that be the case. Like I said, granted, we don't know how this ends. We don't know what it looks like over the next 12 months. And it certainly looks like it's going to get a lot tougher in BC and Canada, and in our Hong Kong community as well, before it gets better. But I guess, yeah, it's kind of just like, we've got this far, you've survived to this point, like keep going, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think even though the physical divide, you know, not just between you and me and you know, MTMM over there and MTMM over here, but just in general being a lot more distance from, you know, loved ones and your friends and everything like that. I think in a sense it really has brought us all a lot closer in a lot of ways too, which I am really grateful for in many aspects of my life. And I think, like you were saying, it's really shown how strong of a community we really are, and seeing everyone come out and rally and support each other through all of this in any way that they can, even though they're going through their own struggles, was really amazing to see. And that's not something that's just going to end when all of this ends, right? That's something that we've kind of grown to. Yeah, we just kind of embedded in how we now go about our lives and supporting each other. Yeah, I think it's been sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I feel like the roadmap to surviving any kind of adversity is essentially the same, whether it's, you know, you set yourself a personal task or a personal goal, or it's something more confronting that globally everyone's facing at the same time. But I think perspective counts, and your mindset going into these arduous kind of times is very telling, and will ultimately play a big role in your ability to get through. Now, if we kind of look at our coaching methodology and how we want our clients to you know, take on these big tasks, it is a lot of focusing on what you can control, taking it one step and one day at a time, doing what you can, being happy with it, you know, putting in a good level of effort, but being happy that things aren't always going to be perfect. And again, leveraging that community support that you do have, that we are working, right? And if you can do all of those things, it's not as daunting a challenge, right? It's annoying, it's frustrating, it's not easy, but it doesn't have to be as bad as possible all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And I think, you know, that goes for the mindset that you go into something like this with, and also the mindset that you come out of it with. After reading your Bleachers report, you touched a lot on how, you know, we don't have to look at 2020 as being the worst year ever, right? Or the year that everything was on fire and we were just, you know, just trying to survive. I think there's a lot of good that's come out of it, and a lot of lessons that we've all learned, even if, you know, maybe it wasn't the greatest experience going through it. Okay, now we can look back on those experiences and take what we've learned and apply it as we move forward, which I think is really, really powerful in the long run.
Yeah, so I put in there, this is my unpopular opinion, is that I've actually really enjoyed 2020. You know, in a lot of ways, it has been a really good testing opportunity, and has provided a lot of time to be able to say, like, okay, like, you know, you get to that point in the workout when you're 3/4 of the way through and everything in you wants to quit, and you got to dig deep. It's that moment that you start to really, really test out, like, who you are, why am I doing this? What's my self-talk like? What's my self-belief like, et cetera, et cetera. We've had a year of that, right? Like, we've really had the majority of the year to be able to really reflect and see, like, okay, when the chips are down, when everything's kind of taken away and there's no glitz and glamour, like, am I fundamentally happy with who I am, what I'm doing, and where I'm going? And I think the people that have maybe really struggled the hardest with that this year are the people that maybe aren't, you know, and that's okay. And what an opportunity to be able to take and notice that, so that now you can start to rectify that, right? But I'm also very cautious of a lot of the posts and a lot of the noise that's saying, like, 2020 is a bigger, you know, dumpster fire as my first marriage, and like shit like that, that's just kind of everywhere. And I think that kind of attitude is like, you kind of miss that opportunity, right? That we're, you know, hopefully, but probably never going to get again, you know. At the same time as there's been all this chaos, like, yeah, I think we've had, I did a count while I was in the bush, I think 14 new babies born into like the MTMM client community this year, including like Kat and my own first child, right? And I've had another 4 or 5 of my really close mates all have their first kids this year. I've had a couple of cousins just announce that they're expecting next year. So to throw out 2020 because of all the challenge and all the adversity also denies you the ability to celebrate a lot of the wins and a lot of the joys. And it's times like this that those things need to be celebrated more. You can't have one without the other. If we try to numb ourselves all the time from feeling bad or feeling pain or expressing grief or hardship, then we also cancel out our ability to feel joy, to feel love, to feel happiness, right? You can't have one without the other. So I think it's important to recognize that there's going to be both, but also make sure you're taking the time to actually say, hey, yeah, these were the good elements of 2020, right?
And it's funny because looking back at March and, you know, trying to guess what the next year was going to look like, it's looked nothing like that for me, whether it be, you know, what's happened with MTMM or just generally like in life and self-development and everything like that. It's just, it has not gone in a direction that I assumed it would, but I think that it's gone in a much better direction. And there's been a lot more opportunity for growth than I ever did anticipate that there would be. And I've seen that throughout the community a lot too, and with clients that I'm working with and everything like that. So it's really amazing to see that we are all able to kind of come together and share those experiences together too.
The reality is we don't know what the future holds, right? Like, we have no idea. We assume tomorrow is going to be the same as today. And we just assume next week's going to be the same as this week, but it's not. It's just an assumption. It's not for sure, you know? And if nothing else, maybe 2020 has been a really good opportunity to cut away a lot of the noise and really focus on, you know, the things that are important to us, the people that are closest to us, you know, making sure we're in touch with our family, being grateful for those things that we do have, that we do love, because they can be taken away without any warning, right? And that's a scary thought. And that's, you know, not a happy thought for sure, but that's the reality. And I think that being aware of the reality kind of brings us back to why the importance of being grateful, right? And really not taking things for granted, but for trying to be more present and trying to enjoy the moment, right? Getting off your phone when you're spending time with your family, right? Those kind of things, they sound silly, but you know, if it was the last time that you were hanging out with your best friend and you spent the whole time like messaging someone else on Instagram or Facebook, like how good are you going to feel about that for the rest of your life, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like Ben.
It sounds a bit morbid and it sounds a bit, I guess, like pessimistic, but it's the reality, you know. I think that hopefully my hope is that, yes, we have learned a lot of these lessons and 2020 has been a very confronting reminder of what's important. I hope that when things return to a more, I don't want to say normal, but more stable, and kind of return more to what we know as day-to-day life, that we don't forget a lot of the lessons that 2020 has taught us. And like I said, I don't like saying return to, because I don't think after something like this, we'll ever go back to the way things were. I think it's going to be a new type of normal, but I'm hoping that within that people do still remember there was a time when you couldn't just go overseas or you couldn't just go and see your family. Shit, we couldn't even go outside for more than an hour at one point, right? So if you look around, right, every day, no matter whether you're down in lockdown now in Canada and kind of Christmas is cancelled, or you're in Melbourne and things are opening up, there's still things around you that are happening that you can be so grateful for, you know. And I think that it's important to keep that front of mind, and it will make whatever is coming ahead much easier to bear. You know?
Oh, as soon as I get to come visit you guys, I'm going to be so grateful.
Yeah, 2 weeks of quarantine. Like you know, like we said, I could never have imagined when we left Canada that, like, it would never even entertain my mind that there might be something that would occur ever that would mean that we couldn't just come back whenever we wanted, you know? Like, I think, yeah, even, can you imagine explaining to Matea in 3 or 4 years and saying, oh, you know, we used to be able to travel wherever we wanted, whenever we wanted, for as long as we wanted. And she'd be like, what are you talking about? We can't even, you know, you can only just leave the state now, right? Hopefully not.
3 or 4 years,
Yeah.
hopefully.
But yeah, it's crazy. And then even I think when things really kind of picked up in March, I think most people were of the mindset that it was like, oh, okay, this is shit for like the next couple of weeks, and then it'll just kind of disappear. And maybe that's a bit of an insight into our attention spans and kind of what they've become over the last 5 or 10 years too, that people got bored of COVID because it lasted longer than most like hot topics last.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, COVID doesn't care if it wasn't mainstream or wasn't cool anymore. It was kind of been here to stay. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember trying to guess how long it would last. And, you know, I started planning trips to see friends and family, you know, thinking that it would be over in a couple of months' time. And boy, was I mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, you think March, and to think that that by Christmas maybe hopefully things will be better it's almost an unfathomable amount of time. And I guess even we can talk about time as a perspective and a construct as well. But it felt like the whole year moved so quickly, and then all of a sudden it's like, it's Christmas next week.
Yeah, you know? So crazy. So
yeah.
Crazy. Well, I guess in an effort to kind of bring this back to the topic of this podcast and the reason for recording, is that we wanted to kind of bring ourselves back to those shorter conversations that are obviously tricky for us, Ben. But we want to make sure that this podcast, MTMM Radio, remains, you know, a beneficial resource for our community and what we kind of set out to create with it. And not just with the guests that we have on, but also within the community, within the coaches, clients, and you know, and beyond, and different challenges and topics and difficult conversations that we continue to have with clients and community members. We want to kind of bring that out and give those a voice and start the conversation so that people, you know, don't feel so alone in their struggles. So I know Ben's excited for what we have in store for next month, so I'll let him touch a little bit on that, and then we'll close up here and we'll look forward to sharing what we have in store for January and the rest of 2021.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good point. And obviously, yeah, I can talk a lot and I enjoy talking, and probably that's how we started the podcast in the first place. But yeah, I think primarily, you know, we started this like we've started everything, and we have a point in our meetings on a weekly basis, like what else can we be doing to try to be, you know, of benefit to the community, and what else could we be doing that someone might find useful or might make the information that we're trying to provide a little bit more accessible. And podcasts and video is obviously a really good way to do that. But I think, and this is this is on me. Like, I think maybe lost our way a little bit with the podcast this year. And I think just having that kind of structure in place in terms of like some different themes that we see, because that's the other thing as well. It's not just ideas or common struggles that people have that we want to talk about, but we also notice as coaches there's a pattern when these particular struggles become more prominent across the year. Obviously December, holidays, festival, dealing with that and anxiety, that's a whole nother episode that we'll do, but that's something we see around this time. And then obviously in January as well, we do see a lot of that, like New Year's resolution, a lot of goal setting and stuff that comes in. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about as we move forward next year, is taking these big sort of universal themes for these particular points in the year and actually deep diving into them, and helping the community understand how to approach those ideas, or how to share those anxieties, right? Because we're doing these conversations because it is so common, right? But the other thing that's really common with the challenge is that everyone thinks that they're the only one that's really going through it, right? And we want to kind of break that down and share the burden across as many people as we can, right?
Mm-hmm. So this next month, I guess January, is often a month that people focus on goal setting, New Year's resolutions, which I think will be somewhat the same this year, but will also look very different in terms of resolutions and goals and everything like that, based on the year and experiences that we've had. But we want to make sure that we're also touching on, you know, the discomfort that comes with accepting change, and how that looks amongst the community as well.
Yeah. Well, we've seen probably this year be the biggest example of how confronting change can be, right? And a big part of that is it is unknown and there is a lack of control. So that'll be the topic for next month. We'll be talking about as well the difference between setting a goal and being mindful of habit, right? The 2020 book list, if anyone's been keeping up, Atomic Habits was definitely my book of the year. And I think that book is a really, really good articulation of the importance of paying attention to what you're doing day to day, right? Because where you are now is a reflection of what you're doing every day, not a reflection of what your goals are. So if you've set yourself a long-term goal and you've never achieved it, it's not the goal that needs to change, it's the practice, right? So those kind of things are what we're going to explore next year. We're going to talk to a couple of different guests about the benefits, the pros and cons of goal setting, what that actually means, right? And really how breaking things down into smaller, manageable pieces makes those kind of big term, longer term goals more achievable, right? By focusing on the here and now.
Mm-hmm. So, the typical saying, new year, new you, we like to avoid that, and instead of a new year, new you, it's a new year, it's the same you, but we'll just be changing and reprioritizing how you are approaching your goals.
Exactly right. Exactly right. There's nothing wrong with you, right? But there might be something wrong with where you're prioritizing your health and your wellness in your list of priorities. And if it's been at the bottom of the pile for a while, that tends to be the motivator of maybe why things are at a position where you feel like you really need to do something about it this year. So if that is you, or if that's someone you know, that is something that we work with a lot of clients through. But again, it's not this 6-week crash approach and then put health back to the bottom of the priority list, right? It really is an effort, because part of the understanding what's going on with your day-to-day practice is to understand, well, why has health been at the bottom of your priority list for so long, and what can we do to make sure it doesn't get back there, right? Because it's only going to get harder.
Yeah.
There's my pill of wisdom. It's only going to get harder tomorrow than it is today. And the more tomorrows you leave it, the harder it's going to be. You're never going to have as much time as you have right now.
Good. We've got a lot of quotes now. All right. Well, we'll leave it there and we'll save the rest for January's coaches chat. But if you have any questions, any insight, anything that you'd like us to touch on in coming months, please don't hesitate to reach out on social or to one of the coaches individually. But as always, thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you in the next one.
And if you've made it to this part, big thank you for listening.
Thank you.